Hi, so my book that I'm going to be reviewing is called The Story of Valentine's Day, and it is by Clyde Robert Beulah, and it is illustrated by Susan Estelle Quaz, and it looks like this. So Clyde Robert Beulah was born on a farm in a small town in Missouri, but he currently lives in Los Angeles, California. He's an author of more than 60 books, both fiction and nonfiction. He's been writing since 1946, and his first published book was called The Donkey Cart. And a fun fact, his first grade teacher asked all of the students, the class he was in, and asked them if they had $1,000, what would they do with it? And his answer was he wanted to buy a desk, that he would buy a desk. And all his classmates laughed at him, but his reason was he wanted to buy a desk or just a flat surface because he wanted to use that to write his stories on. The illustrator, Susan Estelle Quaz, is a part-time educator at the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. She enjoys working on different kinds of mixed media, such as gouache, which is, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but it's gouache, it's like opaque watercolor. Also graphite, colored pencil, and plain old watercolor. This book is nonfiction. It is very informative and very descriptive. It gives us an understanding of a celebrated person or event in history, like something popular from today, and it gives us information about it, about how it came to be, and its background history, basically. So I chose this book because I thought it was very interesting. I thought there was more to it than just St. Valentine's, but it was actually more than that. There was more history to it, like how it started at Rome, and I thought it was just basic Christianity, but no, it started at Rome, and how the Romans believed in a god named Lupercus. I think that's how you say it. And he was a Roman god who people believed to have protected the people's crops and animals from vicious wolves. So they celebrated Lupercalia. So they celebrated Lupercalia, which is in the name of Lupercus. So basically it means Feast of Lupercus, and it celebrates the beginning of spring. So in this festival, girls all over Rome would would write their names on pieces of paper, and they would put it in an urn. And then the boys would then take turns picking out papers from the urn, and then whoever's name they picked, that's who their partner will be for the rest of the festival in like games, dances, and activities. So this is the god Lupercus right here. So after Christianity arrived at Rome, people stopped celebrating Lupercalia, and instead the church decided to honor a priest, and they renamed the holiday St. Valentine's. And so the Roman emperor back then, he was named Claudius the Cruel, or Claudius II. He believed in Roman gods, of course. So when St. Valentine refused to pray to the Roman gods, he was taken away and imprisoned. And when St. Valentine tried to convince Claudius the Cruel to convert to Christianity and to believe in God, the emperor decided to behead him. But before all of that, St. Valentine already befriended the prison guard and the prison guard's daughter, who happens to be blind. And when it was time for St. Valentine to be beheaded, he gave a note to the prison guard to give to his blind daughter. And when the blind daughter opened the note, she miraculously gained her sight back, and she read the note, and then the note said, "From your Valentine." And I thought that was really interesting, because that's where the history of Valentine cards come from. So this is the blind daughter, and this is the note that Valentine's had given her. What I've also learned that I thought was very fascinating, that back then, I'm not sure today, but I know that back then different countries celebrated the holiday in different ways. It depends on the culture and traditions. So the people in England celebrated Valentine's Day on February 14th because they believed that that was the time when birds would find their mate, and they thought that that would be the perfect time to also find their sweethearts. And back then in Italy, men and women would gather in flower gardens, and they would just celebrate music and poetry and just dance. And also in France, French men and women would go to balls, and the men would present the women with bouquets of flowers, because that was very romantic and that was how they celebrated love. And also in other European countries like Austria and Germany, the balls were also very popular. However, later on it became more serious, and Europeans in those countries would, especially the boys would, instead of picking out names of girls in an urn, they would pick out names of saints, and then for the rest of the year, whoever saint they picked, that's the saint they're gonna have to live by. So if, let's say I'm a boy and I picked out a saint name, and it would be like Saint Thomas, then I would have to live like Saint Thomas for the rest of the year. So that was like the tradition in those European countries. And what I also learned, that about 400 years ago, the first Valentine's was written by the Duke of Orleans. He was imprisoned during a war in England, so he wrote many love letters to his wife, and then those letters became the Valentines we now call. And these are the illustrations of the Valentines that the Duke of Orleans sent to his wife. So the Valentines, like the paper Valentines, became very popular in England during the Victorian times, and usually they were decorated in satin and ribbons, and they were very fancy. And also Valentines didn't catch on in America until the 18th century. And in America, handmade cards were very popular until the 19th century, like pinprick style and the acrostic style, and I'll show you what those look like, because on the back of the book, they actually show us like old-fashioned Valentine cards, and this would be the pinprick style, which would be like sewing fancy borders around the cards, and then the acrostic style, which I still do, which I know some people still do nowadays, and they would write out their sweetheart's name, and for each letter they would write a verse, like something sweet. And then on the last page, it shows kind of like a recipe on Valentine cookies. And so that is the end of the book. I really like this book. I thought it was very fascinating to learn more about St. Valentine's, that I know it's more than just a saint, but there was more history behind it. But today we celebrate Valentine's Day as a celebration of love, appreciating those loved ones and appreciating those close to us. Now I appreciate Valentine's Day more. I didn't know there was so much more to it than just than giving gifts to your loved one. So yeah, that's it. I hope you guys liked it, and thank you.